we're here to present you with the 2025 WNBA Kia Most Valuable Player.
Yeah, Asia Wilson's the MVP. The Aces seemed unbeatable. They were going into the postseason, but that hasn't been the case in the playoffs. The Fever took game one. Aces bounced back in game two, but we've got a couple of big tie-breaking game threes in the WNBA semis on Friday night, beginning with Aces Fever at 7:30, and then it's the Mercury hosting the Lynx at 9:30 Eastern Time. Let's bring in our WNBA reporter, Calvin Wetzel, who's been covering these series for us. And we'll start with the Fever hosting the Aces. That was a shocker in game one. Game two, the Aces were like, okay, this is more what it's going to be the rest of this series. What are you seeing game three as things flip to Indiana?
Well, even though it's flipping to Indiana, I do think that the Aces are going to win game three. You have to give Kelsey Mitchell so much credit for Indiana for what she's done carrying them to this point with that depleted roster. It's not just Caitlin Clark who's injured. Ari McDonald, Sydney Colson, Sophie Cunningham, Chloe Bibby, Damiris Stuntis. The injury report is long, and Kamich has stepped up big time. But I just don't think that she has enough help around her at this point. And in game two, the Aces finally figured out how to slow her down. They held her to a playoff career low, 13 points. And when you look at the Aces and how they've played, they typically bounce back, not just after in the game after a loss, but those losses kind of really wake them up and they continue to go on a run. So I think they play more like they did in game two, even on the road tonight. And Asia Wilson, you saw her win that MVP, first ever four-time MVP winner. She's just on another planet right now in the playoffs. So I think she carries them to another win in game three.
You see all those finalists, 4 of the 5 finalists are on the 4 teams remaining in the postseason. Alicia Gray, the only one that's on a team that's out. It sounds like you think that the Aces are going to be able to not only take game 3, but maybe finish this series before they get to game 5. Is that how you see it playing out?
I could see the Fever maybe taking game 4 and getting a split, but I think that's the best case for the Fever. I do think that the Aces take this series, and a split in Indiana will be a win for Vegas, because I really don't see Indiana going into Vegas in a winner-take-all game 5 if it happens, and taking down the Aces again. I do think the Aces could close it out in Indiana, but they are going to close it out one way or the other in 4 or 5 games. The Fever really need to have everyone clicking at the same time to have a chance. They need Kelsey Mitchell to put up 30 like she did in game 1, and they need role players like Lexi Hall, Odyssey Sims to be playing well at the same time. The Aces just have so much higher of a margin for error, and I don't think I've ever said this about a Las Vegas Aces basketball team before, but they are the team with more depth right now. You saw in game 2, Jewel Lloyd, Dana Evans both came off the bench for double figures. Indiana's whole bench is basically in street clothes at this point. So I think the Aces just have a little more wiggle room, and I think they ultimately close out this series.
Should be a great atmosphere. The Fever do have a 3-2 season lead on the Aces, but again, so depleted. They're going to need that crowd to actually make a big difference in that game if they're going to win game 3 on Friday. In the other semi, it's the Lynx and Mercury. It was a huge overtime win in Minnesota for the Mercury. Now Phoenix is back home. What's the key to game 3?
Well, this one is a lot tougher call for me. It could go either way, but I do think the Lynx take this one, even on the road. And the biggest reason, when you look at how game 2 went, the Lynx, of course, blowing that 20-point second half lead. They were still at 5 with a minute left in regulation. Sometimes that lights a fire and you come out swinging in the next game, and vice versa. You're the Mercury, you win a historic and emotional game like that, coming back from down 20. You have to expend a lot of energy, and you might come out a little bit flat next game. So I do think that the Lynx bounce back here, especially when you look at the shooting in that game. The Lynx were 25% from 3, Mercury 41%. Everyone other than Kayla McBride for the Lynx was 3 for 20 from 3. I just don't think that they can shoot that poorly again. And of course, they still went to overtime, even shooting that poorly. So I'm looking for a Minnesota bounce back in game 3.
All right, well, Phoenix already knocked off one finalist from last season. Do you see them potentially winning this series and eliminating the other?
I think they have a better shot than the Fever, but I still think that this is the Lynx series. Again, I have them winning game 3, and at that point, they would have 2 shots to close it out, one of which would be at home. And when you look at this series so far, even though it's tied 1-1, the Lynx have really dominated for 6.5 of 8 quarters. It was only that late collapse that allowed this series to be tied. Now, I certainly think Phoenix is capable of hanging with them, maybe taking one more game at home, but we've been talking about it all year, all regular season even. This has kind of been Minnesota's year. They've been a team on a mission ever since how 2024 ended for them with that heartbreaking overtime loss in Game 5 of the finals, and I don't see that mission coming up short of the finals this year, so I do think we get 1 versus 2, Minnesota versus Las Vegas for the title in October.
All right, that's Calvin Wetzel ahead of what should be a really fun tie-breaking Friday night in the WNBA semifinals. That Fever matchup in Indianapolis, tipping things off at 7:30 Eastern time. The Aces favored by 3.5. It's the same spread in the nightcap. Lynx favored by 3.5 in Phoenix at 9:30.